Good evening. This is Wednesday, October 16th, 2024, 6:02 p.m. And we're at the meeting of the Finance Committee, the budget session number 3. I see a quorum of members are present, so I will call this meeting to order. We have one item on our agenda tonight. It's a continuation of our last 2 budget sessions, and that's item number 1, budget discussions and actions regarding recommending a 2025 budget, including setting the 2025 fee schedule. And just prior to the meeting, Mary Ann just gave us a whole bunch of stuff, but I think the mayor has something to say first, correct?
Sure, I'll highlight the letter that's in the packet. We waited, we were working diligently. As you know, last week, we were under the impression we were going to be in double-digit health insurance numbers, and the HR department and Mary Ann were able to find a solution that gets us actually under what our inflation rate is, so it's a roughly 2 point. I don't know if we have the exact number yet, but it's in a position where we are now well under expenditure constraints. Our effort here from here on out is going to be much easier. Still not totally easy, but right now, as it's presented, we meet all requirements under the state statutes to pass the budget. And I will, I guess, thank Mary Ann for the long, late some of the stuff is still out there. For example, the Wisconsin guidelines for the state, the manufacturing assessed valuations we don't have yet. So some of the stuff we were operating on assumptions. So Mary Ann had to work with some variables that, were unknown until just really hours ago. So good work on behalf of HR directors here, and Mary Ann. Thank you.
All right, well, that is good news. I know the budget always comes down to the wire, so it's good to hear that our health insurance is going to be at a manageable level. So I don't know how we want to get started here on this.
Sure.
Maybe kind of walk us through what's...
Yeah, the financial impact of that health insurance savings. And though we were planning on conducting a joint finance and HR, so that would mean bringing one more member in to next Tuesday's meeting to present the health insurance in total, the whole plan. And then we were hoping we could bring that to council the same evening because, as you know, this time of year, we're always up against the clock when it comes to open enrollment and getting those plans set up so that people get their health insurance cards right away at the first of the year. So we were hoping that you would indulge us in, kind of streamlining that process through next Tuesday. But that did save us quite a bit of money, almost $552,000. We were able to decrease our expenses because of that competitive quote that we got. And that is a firm quote. We heard late this afternoon that was a firm quote. So we're excited about that. That did, as the mayor said, bring down our expenses to almost the expenditure restraint. As far as the final dollars, we would be able to, move around. If you recall, this year, meaning in 2024, you approved 2 additional police officers that were being funded by this year, ARPA. In 25, it would be the donations from the foundation. I had placed those expenses and that revenue in the general fund as in hopes of getting that under the expenditure restraint calculation. If we took those 2 positions out for the 25 budget and put them in the grants fund, which doesn't rely on levies, so it's not part of the expenditure restraint process, then we would qualify for expenditure restraint. I guess the downside of that would be in the 26 budget, if the foundation, let's say, would pull back on funding completely or pull back on funding partially, we'll have to then get that into the expenditure restraint. I believe that was presented to you as a pilot project to see if it was, going to make a difference. I've heard positive feedback on that. I was able to talk to the police chief today about that, even though he's on vacation. And, he knows that people are feeling very positive about those two positions. He definitely is urging us to look at some of the other revenue sources that he presented, because some of those, for example, if it was in the parking fund and we passed on some additional fees to the users, that would reduce our need for levy, which would help with that, expenditure restraint calculation, because the levies of other funds work in that expenditure restraint calculation. So I think, all in all, we're feeling good about meeting that guidelines. So we could still today look at some of these recommendations for changes that were presented by the departments. Before we get started with that, one other item, there was a revised capital plan on your desk as well. We did add one other item to the capital plan. It shows, it's the third line down, Grand Avenue, Kent to Thomas Street design. The infrastructure committee approved that last week, this week?
This last week.
Okay, that we would enter into an agreement with the DOT. So our local share of that project for the design would be $187,575. I believe we'll have sufficient funds in fund balance of the capital that we wouldn't need to borrow money for that. We could just take it out of reserves in the capital plan, and we would still have sufficient reserves on hand. So it wouldn't have any levy nor borrowing impact.
Okay.
But it would be an addition to the total expenses of our budget.
Okay.
I think Gary has a question on that.
Go ahead, Gary.
With regard to the two officers, wasn't it agreed upon that there would be some report at the end of this year with regard to the exact nature of reducing criminality or whatever within the downtown? So I would hope that would come sometime yet this fall. Thank you.
I don't know when they started. It was a year after they started, and I don't think they started in fall.
I think they started maybe, was it about April?
But in preparation for the budgets, I thought that's what we were looking for in preparation for budgets for the preceding year.
For
I don't
26?
For 25 and for 20.
Well, 25 is paid for.
Right, but now they're,
Why don't we get the answer?
I'll do my best. Yeah. The start of that initiative was right around May-ish in that area, and at that time when that was approved, there was this sunset period at the end of 2025 that it was going to be funded through there. But yes, there was an expectation that there would be this return and report concept of the level of impact that is being seen. The results of that. So I will say, for those that have participation in the Public Health and Safety Committee and receive the quarterly operations reports from the city, the last 2 quarters, there has been update information in there from those officers that are engaged in that current detail right now. The most recent one just went out, and so that'll be made available at the Public Health and Safety Committee next week, and it details, just as a bit of a teaser, I guess, it details some success stories that those officers are having with some individuals. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. And maybe this is a question for you, Mary Ann. So in regards to those 2 officers, if we leave them in the general fund, so if we don't move them into the grants fund, what do we, how much are we going to need to cut in order to maintain expenditure restraint?
About $210,000.
210,000.
Which equates to their 2 positions, yeah.
Okay,
And you would either have to cut expenses in the it seems like these are such dumb rules, I apologize, they're not my rules, but cut expenses in the general fund, or you could minimize the levy in another fund through either cutting expenses or increasing revenues in another fund. So if we use parking fund as an example, if you increase revenues in the parking fund, that decreases the levy to that fund, so that would help offset that shortfall in expenditure restraint. So it's expenses in the general fund, levy in all other
Oh,
funds.
levy and all other funds. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Marion, what would be the downfall of putting these positions in the grants
The-
compared to keeping it in the levy?
The downfall would be future years. So in future years, it's always we always struggle meeting levy expenditure restraint because, typically the CPI, so it's 60% of net new construction and CPI. So this year that equates to 4.7%. Well, when you look at all of the expenses that we have, if we see inflation, and this year, like we had mentioned, we were trying to meet those goals for the motor pool, so that was another expense, new expense for the general fund. So we'll be trying to fit that in amongst the other increases in the 2026 budget. But again, if, for example, the foundations were willing to provide partial grants in 2026, then you would only need to fund a portion of that through the levy.
And we might, just looking forward to 2026, we're gonna see additional challenges
Right.
on top of what we're looking at this year.
Yes.
So if we can minimize that risk next year,
Yeah.
it'll make our job easier in the long run.
True. And to remind you, look, we did reduce the salt budget by 100,000. So if next year this time, we have empty barns with no salt in them, we'll have to increase that budget. So, that would be another example of where, okay, now we're going to have to fit that into the 2026 expenditure restraint.
All right, so I guess, do we want to look at, do we want to start looking at budget reductions first and kind of work through those? I guess I'm of the feeling I'd like to try to keep those officers on the in the general fund if at all possible, so that we can make our life easier next year. There's, I don't know if we want to go down the list or if we want to I think the big item that we're sort of talking about right now is parking.
Sure.
And that to me feels like low-hanging fruit.
Yes, so that was to eliminate the first ticket, the warning ticket. I did go through and, we've used some comparables when we look at our parking citations, and I was able to check with all of those other communities to see what they are charging as far as fees are concerned. There are two communities besides ourselves that give one annual warning ticket. That's Neenah and La Crosse. If you look at both of those entities, particularly Neenah has really ratcheted up from the last time I did that survey. There are other tickets. So, the second ticket is $20. The third ticket is $25, and then it goes up to $35 and then $55. La Crosse has one free ticket, and then it's $15, a flat $15. And really, then if you compare that to us, until you get to the sixth ticket, you're going to, pay more in La Crosse. So if you were not inclined to get rid of that warning ticket, you could also adjust your rates for other tickets so that we were recovering, making more, more money off of.
A higher rate of recovery.
Yes, for those people who are getting tickets. And we have not increased our tickets since our study, which I think, I didn't really actually look, but I think it would be around 2016 maybe, or 2015, when we did that study. So they've been in place for a while now.
Well, we went with the automated system. What was that, in 2019? Just, it was right before the pandemic.
Okay.
If I
Oh, so
remember right,
maybe
that's
not
when we
as long as
changed
I
all of
thought.
our parking
Oh,
rules.
yeah, okay, so maybe it was that long, it was that.
Yeah,
long ago.
it's,
I can tell you, I also kind of made note of what vendors each community is using for parking enforcement. Passport, I was surprised, so Appleton actually does charge for their first ticket. So the two people that are also giving free tickets use a different vendor than we do for our parking enforcement. We have been struggling a bit with those first tickets out of the Passport software, whereby it's sending delinquency notices to people that they have owe money when it's a warning ticket. We've
From a
just been,
warning?
yeah, it's
Oh, wow.
not been the smoothest process. So it has been a little bit of a challenge for us to manage that free ticket as well.
Because it costs
and it does-
us money to
Yes.
write that ticket and
It
send it out.
does, $1.46, I think, or something like that for each warning ticket we issue. The software charges us a cost per ticket.
Okay.
So there's actually a cost for that. And then you can see a lot, a number of communities don't give any free ticket.
yeah.
I just wanted to add maybe just a little bit more clarification as I'm looking at my notes from that specific proposal as well. It's kind of bifurcated if you look at it. There's the first offense warnings that are kind of in the downtown area really, which is with that passport system, those tickets being issued, but it's for expired meter. There's three big ones. It's like expired meter, or I forget what the other two are, maybe Mary knows.
Overtime parking
Overtime
and with
parking.
no permit.
Thank you. And so if we go off those 2023 numbers, for example, there were a little over 4,400 of those violations that received a first offense warning. So we didn't realize the $10 deposit coming in on each of those. And on top of that, we had to pay $1.49 to issue each of those warnings. So the other group on there, if you see the same proposal sheet in your packet, was an additional nearly 1,000 warning parking citations for various violations around the city. Had those not been warnings, that would have generated like an additional 36,000 and some dollars. However, I will say, I think that's different. That's in a different category, at least in my mind, than these downtown ones. I think the officer discretion in issuing some of those tickets for whatever might be happening in various neighborhoods or things going on, dependent on a specific situation, in my mind, is at least a little bit different than the meter being expired downtown in one of the municipal lots or something. I just wanted to make sure these were two lanes. So it looks like, hey, there's this total of potential $80,000 worth of realized savings maybe, but I see it as two pots. There's the one that's like 44,000, which is for those first offense warnings downtown for those three big violations. And then there's this other section of 36,000, which in essence, if we were to say, no warnings for anything ever, then that sort of eliminates that discretionary piece on the officers.
Okay. So I guess, looking at these numbers here, I'm a little bit surprised at the amount, where we sit on the violations, the forfeiture amount as compared to some of these other municipalities. We could probably adjust our prices, but I think eliminating, what I see is that, when we started the automated parking system and the passport system, almost 5 years ago, the thought back then was to use the one free warning as just sort of to get people used to this system, and not to keep it going forever.
Right.
And I would think that maybe now is the time to revisit that and drop the first the one free ticket. Because I would think after 4 or 5 years, people should have figured out, the method of, parking on the, 2-hour parking, no same side parking, et cetera. So, Alder Hinkie?
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just wondering, is this all street parking that we're talking about?
Yes.
The ramps would still be,
So these citations are issued in the parking ramps as well.
okay. But we wouldn't have to increase anything to staff the parking ramps
No.
anymore?
No.
Okay,
No, there would be no change in parking permits
okay.
or enforcement as a result of this.
I don't think there'd be any change in enforcement at all, because
Right.
the parking enforcement's still writing those tickets.
Yep.
But instead of being free, there's a dollar amount attached
Right.
to it, so.
Okay.
Anyone else? Is this something you want to entertain, or I don't think we have to take a motion yet, or?
So what is that amount? That's the decision then, right?
Well, I guess it could be as potentially as high as $80,000, or it could be as low as $44,000, I guess, depending on how you,
Well, I mean, for the first ticket,
Oh, right, so you could establish what that rate is,
Yeah.
yes.
what that rate is. Is it $10 or $5 or $8 as other communities?
Are the current increase in the budget, what numbers were used for that? Or is that using our current numbers?
I think, do you know, was it $10 for the first ticket then? Yeah.
yeah, $10 for the first ticket.
And keeping all the other ones the same? I'm assuming, keeping all continuing tickets the same?
I would think so. I mean, we could increase them all, but, it's maybe just take small steps with the first violation and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, for ease of the proposal that went in, we kept it at the $10. But obviously, as indicated already by some of the discussion here, in lieu of that, it could be simply scaling up some of those other things. I really think it's pretty flexible in terms of, well, what kind of savings or enhancement would we like to realize? And also, I would imagine it's certainly dependent from year to year on how many of those violations are occurring. This was figured off of using the 2023 numbers, but I'm not suggesting that those numbers are exactly the same year over year, so.
Yeah, there certainly would be and if enforcement is increased in parking violations too, we might see more people that are careful with overtime or expired meters, and that may generate less revenue in the long run. It's hard to say, I guess. I guess I get a little concerned about trying to balance the budget on enforcement of violations, because you really can't guess of what the total dollar amount is going to be, because the way enforcement's supposed to work is supposed to curb people from doing something instead of becoming a revenue source. Mayor?
So one of the feedbacks we got, and maybe the deputy chief can attest to this or comment, you had mentioned trying to get people into the habit. Well, one of the things that this has done is given people an opportunity to understand that first one every year is free. So you take that risk until you get a ticket, and then you start paying. So we don't know what our potential lost revenue is for that kind of activity. And I would also agree that we still want some discretion outside of that, where we know this is a known problem. All the other ones, they could be various reasons why a police officer would want to have some discretion.
Yeah.
So I think, I think we can reasonably rely on a good portion of that 40,000 to come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What it might do is you might start eliminating the second, third, and fourth. So you're right. We may get a spike and it may drop off. So if we're trying to, the behavior we're looking for is that people pay for their parking, not that we're issuing more tickets
Yeah,
necessarily.
and yeah, and, you know, to your point of getting people to, you know, the enforcement act of getting people to not game the system. I mean, we instituted the no reparking rule in order to keep downtown employees from clogging up our streets all day, because they would take a chance if they would get a ticket or not, because it was cheaper to amass 4, 5, 6 tickets than it was to pay for a permit.
Yeah, as I'm listening to some of the conversation, I realize that one thing that likely would have been a little bit more helpful is, instead of just providing the 2023 numbers, had I gone back a few more years to see, is there benefit from an education component that has been taking place? Are we seeing sort of a waning of that? I mean, we have those numbers, I just, certainly don't have them here with me tonight, but that would be interesting. I mean, to your point, yes, it was hopeful that there would be an education time period. People would kind of get in the groove of, oh, this is how this new system works. But as you stated, we've been in effect here with this since, I think it was 2019 or 17 or something like that. So my hope is most would be educated by now.
I would think so. All right, anything else on this? I mean, do we want to kind of put a pin in this as a possible revenue enhancer? Yes, by consensus, I'm going to say yes, so we'll say, can we safely say 80,000 or
No,
44?
no, 44, the 80,000 included
Discretionary.
discretionary, and I really don't think we should go that far. I think that we should give our officers, and that looks punitive. We have a budget problem, we shouldn't be punitive with it, and allow our officers to do their, use their discretion otherwise, other than the parking. That is what I would like to see.
Yep, yeah, I tend to agree, absolutely, I tend to agree on that, because we shouldn't try to balance the budget on enforcement actions, so, to that extent. So we'll say, 44,000 for parking. I don't know, anything else on this list kind of jump out on you? Want to take a stab at?
I know we do, oh, go ahead.
Can we take a step back?
Yeah.
What's our goal? What's the number we got to meet?
210,000 to cover those 2 police officers to keep them in the general fund?
Okay.
If we move those officers from the general fund to the grants fund, we meet expenditure restraint.
And this list is just options. This is not current in the budget.
Correct, they are not in the budget
It's
currently.
not in there yet. These are your
Correct. Okay.
icing on the cake.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, we could say, move them to the grants fund, and we could go home. But that doesn't, the time we save now, well,
I guess I would just like to go to, leaf pickup right away, since we found out that's not going to be helping our nitrous or our discharge rates anymore. Phosphate rates.
yeah.
I think we could, I believe that's the main reason we started pushing that hard. We're still gonna have to come up with a solution for that, I have a feeling, but I think that's something we could go back to, having yard waste days or something like that in the fall. Just my thought.
Any thoughts on that?
This is out in the public, this in the wheel tax, and I've gotten emails. I'm not married to leaf pickup because I don't use it. I mulch, I'm lazy. But it is seen as a service, and here's where I'm coming from with the budget. I get that we have budget restraints, but what we're looking at is increased enforcement and taking away services so far. And that is, I'm just looking at the perception from the residents in that they want us to restrain spending and things, and I get that. But with the service, I don't know if anybody's been around since the big, what is it, large item pickup? is
Large
what
item pickup.
that was in what, 2014 or 2015? I still hear about that. People are still so angry about losing services. I guess I'm really torn on this one because, like I said, I could see it, but up in my district, it is used a lot. I mean, Forest Park has a heck of a lot. Here's my other issue is safety. I'm worried about people are so used to this that when the travel to school from the east side, like Riverview and Forest Park, is to go up Sylvan and on 13th. And I did that trip twice a day for many, many years, and there is so many leaves on the side of the road that I just think it's a danger at times, just from the leaves falling down. And people aren't going to go moving those into their yards, you know that. It just narrows the road. There's not sidewalks. I just worry about that aspect as well if we don't have them coming through to sweep and pick up during those times.
How many years have we been doing
Leaf pickup?
the leaf pickup?
As long as I can remember.
Forever.
At least 30 years.
Here's the historian.
Well, I can't answer that question.
I mean, as long as I've owned my home, we've always had leaf pickup. And that's 27, 28 years.
But the city of Wausau is a tree city. I mean, we're quite proud of that. And with trees come leaves. And I think if we work towards being a tree city, very proud of our canopies over our streets and the color of our trees at this time of the year, well, with that comes leaves. And I think that we at least have to provide that one leaf service, and I leave it up to Public Works to determine the rest. But I would not want to, I think people, a lot of people are living, cannot depend on taking their leaves somewhere or mulching. They depend on that leaves to be in the street. And I think that that's a service that I think this city has done for a long time. And I would be certainly against withdrawing that service from the city. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if we didn't do specific leaf pickup and allow people to put them in the street and stuff like that, we're still sweeping and we're still cleaning the streets, right? That's something that we're still going to do to help out our storm sewers, just we're not going to get credits or anything for it. And so the issue with getting the credits, the phosphorus credits, is the requirements are becoming so stringent, right? That means we would have to pick up all leaves in alleys. We'd have to do at least 4 rounds in the city. And right now we try to do 2, right? And so it's kind of that cost to benefit ratio, right? And I don't think there's any way we could get into all the alleys in the city to do leaf pickup. So I just don't think that's a feasible option.
If we don't remove services or we don't increase fees, how are we going to balance the budget?
I think there's other ways, and I've talked to the mayor about it. I think we have to look at travel for staff. We have some staff members that are using $25,000 a year to go to travel for education. There are other things that has fat in this place. I'm just saying we have a lot. We have really good services here, and I absolutely agree. But it is very tough to take services away because we don't have a low tax rate here. And so I hear this all the time. I would rather, here's another thing I'd rather do, is take the stormwater off the levee and put that in as a fee service. I mean, these are things that really could help. Garbage is another one where we could take quite a bit off the levee and help people. I just think that we can't expect our rates to be high. And I hear this from realtors all the time. You know, we're trying to get people to come to us, even though there's not a lot of places you can buy a house right now. But it always comes down to taxes. They look at Weston, they look at the, you know, the other neighboring municipalities, but they don't, you know, Rib Mountain, somebody moved to Rib Mountain and said, oh, when does leaf pickup come? They don't have it. And so it is seen as a plus to live, you know, to have those extra services here. And I just think the first thing is to take away a service that people have relied on for so long that it's hard. And I would like, if it's absolutely nothing else we can do, I don't have a problem with it, but I don't want to start by redlining things that people enjoy here.
Yeah, I think you're correct about the quality, these quality of life services, that they're important. I mean, the rates are high. And if we start eliminating quality of life stuff, I mean, you know, one of the options we have is closing a swimming pool, and that's kind of a non-starter with me, because for the first place, we haven't even finished paying for the pools, and now we want to close one. So, I mean, if we want to, I guess, I see the value in maybe changing the leaf pickup program, streamlining it or something, but this might be something that just needs to take a longer look at to find if there's a better, or cheaper way of doing it. I don't know, but yeah, this.
I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I just,
Yeah. No, it's
it would have been balanced if we
Yeah.
got that out of there. yeah. But I'm fine keeping it in there if there's other options. Yeah.
if we can find it. Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
So just to speak to the travel thing, and I don't know why we didn't list it out here, but we did talk to every director about travel, and we had several directors reduce their travel expense already. That's in the budget.
Yes,
Okay. Some of them pretty significantly.
yes.
These were ideas that were requested for either cuts or revenue increases. They're not all created equally. I think every one that was presented by a director, we put forward, I think with the exception of one that didn't really pass the staff test, but whether we like some of these or not, they were offered by directors. So I think, you know, that's why we're here.
Yep. And we do
If
have,
it's a bad idea, then let's find out a way to modify it, make it better, or skip it and move on to something else.
right, and I think Wausau Events is here as a result of two of the revenue recommendations from the police department as far as event fees, so I don't, you know, they could go home sooner
Yeah,
versus
maybe
later.
want to take that up, because those really caught my eye. That was for the special event public safety charge for ticketed events, and I think that was a $1 surcharge on a ticketed event.
Yes.
That could generate $157,000. And then there was a public safety fee to cover 400 block concerts via the permit fee adjustments, and that would be a $12,000 revenue enhancement because we would be increasing the permit cost for free events. So, which in hopes of recovering some of those charges. And Deputy Chief, if you want to speak to that, maybe we could hear from Wausau.
Sure, I'll
Events.
try to give a little bit of context here. These are companion proposals, certainly, and they differ significantly. And just, I hope that the committee has an understanding that when we approach this exercise, which wasn't an exercise, we approached it as like, this is what we've been asked to do, is to identify these cuts or revenue enhancements, and so we did so in earnest, and in the spirit of leaving no leaf unturned. We had to look at some things that maybe weren't always going to be super palatable at the beginning, but understanding that these are mainly conceptual, brought forward to you to Maybe we adjust a pay scale. Maybe we modify this or do that. So they're kind of concepts or principles. This one in particular with the public safety surcharge for staffing special events, it's not an idea that we came up with. This is something that has been in place around the state, around the country, different locations, different venues where there's different special event venues. For example, there is it's not uncommon to have a surcharge to a sold ticket that will then offset the costs to local law enforcement to staff those events, to provide the required safety. Unfortunately, we're living in a world where that's becoming, some of those issues surrounding special events are becoming much more conspicuous and tragic, and we want to make sure that we're prepared for those things. So when you see this number of 157,000, that is, again, this is based off of what has been reported to us to be estimated attendance at these same functions previously, which we used Wings Over Wausau, the Hmong Wausau Festival, Blues Fest, the Wisconsin Valley Fair. Just so this wasn't being done in a vacuum, I did my best to reach out to the organizers of these major events. SC Wausau Events is present. I was able to make contact also with Yiling Zhang, and I spoke with Keith Longenhan from the fair, just so they weren't caught off guard and understood that this was likely going to be something to be discussed. They had varying perspectives. I'm sure, Pete and Allie have their perspective and can share that, but I appreciate that and I respect where they're coming from. I'm not an economist. I don't know what the economic impact of these events has on the community, but I know that we want to keep them safe, and so therefore we brought these forward as proposals. Obviously, the 400 block concerts aren't ticketed events. There's, it's open to the public, so that was a little bit more of a fluid concept, with perhaps the idea being that for the ticketed events, whatever surplus might be realized could be used to offset whatever funds are used to staff those non-ticketed events. Just throwing that out for your consideration there.
Okay. I don't know, Mayor?
Just to add on to part of the new and improved or new environment we live in today, society we live in today, these are not just revenue enhancers trying to find ways to get new money. These are revenue opportunities based on known expenses and increasing costs already. So we've had multiple, it's political season, political events in town. We get reimbursed zero to the tune of, I think one event was $10,000 roughly of added overtime for our PD to be there in support of these events. We have Parks is installing safety devices in the park, security devices. There's security going on that is probably 3 or 4-fold what it was 10 years ago. Just hardening venues is costly, and we're doing that and currently don't have a revenue source to cover that. So this is really covering security. The other option is, to have private security, but I think we can do this best integrated into what we already do. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be a bad actor. You could have, we talked about the ballards strategically placed on the 400 block. You could have somebody accidentally drive through a crowd, get their foot stuck on the gas. It happens. And we have 2,500 people down there. You saw what happened with the Waukesha Christmas parade. We don't want that. We're looking at parade route, hardening the parade route. So in order to do that, it costs money.
I would add, similar to the parking discussion that took place a minute ago, we just used $1 for the purpose of this conversation. That is, also a fluid concept as well. Unfortunately, yes, to punctuate that, that is the world we live in. If you go into the southeastern part of the state, they unfortunately are having to spend quite a few dollars to secure those functions to ensure the safety of event goers. We're fortunate here in this area. We have great relationships with those major event organizers. We appreciate that. They're able to call us. We're able to call them and talk through things as they come up. Not insensitive to the fact that many of these things are weather dependent, the sales of those tickets. So I recognize the difficulties with those variables associated with it. But for quite some time now, our overtime budget has been bearing the brunt of that, the lion's share of that. And we want to do that and staff that. We just, again, in the spirit of being thorough with this and taking this task seriously, we bring this proposal forward.
Okay. All right. Gary, did you got something to say?
How did we arrive, Deputy, I'm sorry, how did we arrive at the 157 again? I'm sorry, I may have missed that.
Nope, that's okay. That was using some past estimates that were provided for us. So it looks like approximately 15,000 attendees at Wings Over Wausau in 2023. And if Pete's shaking his head behind me, he can come up and correct me. The Hmong Wausau Festival, approximately 13,000 attendees in 2023. Blues Fest, maybe about 4,000, 4,500 also in 2023. And we didn't have the 2023 numbers for the fair, so we used 2024. It was estimated at about 125,000 over that week of the Wisconsin Valley Fair. I don't exactly know what each of those day tickets cost for all of those events. I know ballpark, so I can't speak specifically to what that does for the price of an individual admission to one of those events, but yeah, those are those numbers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And maybe, before we get a little bit deeper into this, maybe maybe we should take a little bit of public comment, because I see Wausau Events is here. I don't know if they've got anything to add or to say about this, because it would impact your operation, I would assume.
Yeah, so thank you, and thanks, Todd. I mean, we had some very good discussions. Todd and I did. From the ticket standpoint, if we have a ticketed event like Blues Fest or something else, adding a fee, we've already got fees on there from our electronic ticket provider and everything else. So adding a fee on for public safety, something that we're open to. We knew that at some point it would come to that. It gets a little more complicated with the free concerts on the square on the 400 block. We don't typically come to the city to get a large dollar amount for those concerts. So those are where our executive director goes out, raises the sponsorship funds to put those on. I'm not sure that everybody knows how much those concerts actually cost, those 12 concerts that we do down there on the square. So, we pay a permit fee. There's a permit fee. There's a rental fee for the 400 block. And we don't even have exclusive use of the 400 block. So we have to contend with other things that go on down there, whether it be protesters, whether it be other things, because that is a public space. It's not a park. We're not granted access to have exclusively an event down there. So that creates additional issues for us. And then we have to pay the band. And the bands are anywhere from $1,300 to $2,000 a week, depending on which bands we have come in. And our sound and lights, that comes out of Appleton. So that's $1,200 to $1,400 a week right there. And then we have staff time, we have trash, we have the scouts that come in and clean up the 400 block afterwards, all of the other related expenses. So before a note's even played on the 400 block, we're looking at a bill of $50,000 plus for free concerts for the city of Wausau and its citizens. If we have a fee added onto that, from our side of it, that's just another struggle for us to have to go out and raise additional money. Some of our sponsors, one of our sponsors in particular, Rocket Industrial, great sponsor of ours, they did something very nice this year where they gave nonprofits the opportunity to be the presenting one. They paid for it at each one of the concerts. So we're not just putting on concerts, we're actually touching the nonprofits in the community. Again, like I said, the use of the 400 block, that has become more challenging in the last 2 years for us, dealing with a lot of things, working side by side with the police department to handle those things. And that one there, that would be really tough on us financially. This year was one of our toughest years that we've ever had as an organization. We had rainouts. We typically try to cover our expenses and everything else, but we're going to look at a event loss on Wings over Wausau because of almost a complete rainout of well in excess of $50,000. It could be close to $100,000. So again, as a nonprofit, we're not making money on these things, but I do understand from the standpoint of public safety of what we have to do, and we rely on the police department to tell us what is needed there and to provide that. And so on ticketed events, that's one thing. I would ask though that if that's applied to us, it should be applied to any event in Wausau that is a ticketed event and the police department's at. It should not just be 400 block or things like that. So that's just some thoughts. Oh, go ahead.
I just have one thing that I wanted to add, just from being the resource that people come to when they want to host an event in Wausau, is that the fee is just to rent the 400 block alone. So we're talking City of Wausau event permit fee, the Parks Department fee, the necessary trash and toilets are enough fees that those people that want to rent the 400 block just for one evening is enough to make them not want to have an event. That is a space that I think all of us want to see programmed. And I mean, I'm not just talking 400 blocks specifically, but I'm talking if you guys, like, as a group start adding other fees to that, it's really going to deter a lot of what we want to see happen, and especially make downtown more lively and keep that all going, which is definitely something for economic impact. I mean, we moved 2 concerts this year out of Wausau, I'm sure you heard about that, to different municipalities, and our businesses downtown definitely felt that impact. So I just want that to be considered. And again, like Pete said, we are a nonprofit. We have really great relationships with a lot of you guys and with a lot of our departments, and we want to keep that. We understand that there needs to be some kind of fee, but we really want to make it where it's workable for everybody and our organization as well. So thank you.
All right. Any other comment? Any other public comment? Or?
I would just add that from a room tax standpoint, the city, prior to the new legislation, had a lot of flexibility of how we could allocate room tax. And with the new law, really, we only are allowed to allocate room tax dollars to events that are targeted to bring people from out of town. So concerts on the square, because it's more of what I would call a local resident event, really wouldn't probably qualify for room tax dollars today. So for them to try to make up the fee for the 400 block would be really hard because they couldn't apply for a room tax. And, the city is following the regulations. Really, they're supposed to, anyone who receives room tax dollars from the city is supposed to put 100% of those dollars into marketing, because that's what the statutes require. And so it cannot be used to offset other, event-type expenses, though it can allow room for other expenses. But it is kind of placed these event organizations in a more difficult situation. And of course, I should say I'm on Wausau Events Board, but.
All right, yeah, and speaking from the chair of the Room Tax Committee, that's, what you said is absolutely true. It's room tax dollars are for marketing expenses, and we target events that will attract people beyond that 90-mile circle so that they will spend nights here, and it's tough to, it does, the room tax funding, by paying for marketing, does open up their budgets for other expenses, but it can't be used for other expenses. So, Deputy Chief.
I just wanted to share additionally, in the absence of the Hmong American Center representative from there or from the Fair Board, they shared similar sentiments, similar concerns, whether it be weather-related concerns, other financial obligations that they have to meet. And I think they probably all agree that none of them are doing this to be wealthy. They're not making money on these events. I think they're doing these events because it's a good thing for Wausau, and we can certainly respect that. I will say, like, hey, it still is it's an overtime burden for the police department, but not one that we're not willing to meet. We want to staff these events to make them safe. In fact, you'll see one of the other proposals that we put in there was a reduction in police department overtime budget. That becomes increasingly difficult to meet if these other staffing burdens can continue, just for your consideration.
All right. Any other discussion on this? Or do we want to consider maybe, not consider a fee for free events, but something for ticketed events? Mayor, it looks like.
Well, yeah, that's what I would, hearing from what we've heard is, and it's a $12,000 potential impact. It's difficult to collect that evenly and fairly. But, it's a consideration, and I think what it shows is that there is cost down there, there are costs down there for these events that we will not need to start thinking about, because they're only going to get higher. We want to purchase things like drones that can cover, rather than having maybe X number of CSOs and officers, one tethered drone could potentially cover more ground. So there's technology out there that can help this, but that comes at a cost. So it's something to think about down the road. I guess I don't have a preference here, other than I think we should take a look at what the comments were and consider looking at this somewhere down the line.
Okay. Alderman McElhaney, did you have something or no?
I thought Gary did.
Okay, well, Gary?
Thank you. Chief, again, for the fair, for instance, I know that we do provide police protection. Do we bill the fair, for instance, to that? I know that they're pretty a constant force out at the fair.
Yeah, that's a great question. We do not bill the fair for services right now. What I will say is our presence has evolved over time at the fair. For example, years ago they did not have. They did not pay for security officers to come in from, like, a Permar, for example, to man some of the gates, some of, like, the beer tent and in the
right.
grand tent.
But that's all taken care of by the
That's what they do now, and some of their staff, they handle that. So we do not do that. We are there in a patrol capacity to patrol the midway, to patrol the grandstand, to respond to incidents that are occurring within the park during that week of the fair. Yes, and they are not billed.
Because I think that's at least a daily charge, I think, of $9. I believe that's what it was.
Okay.
But thank you for that. Thank you.
Yep.
We're just talking about police, but have we looked at what it costs DPW? I mean, there's usually extra. Is it cost fire for extra for any of these events?
I would assume there's a charge. I don't think Wausau Fire was at the fair this year. I think they contracted with, we've got the fire chief just
I mean,
popped in, so.
yeah, and I'm sure Chief Kopp can speak directly to that. I will say, as far as it relates to the fair, I believe there are some volunteers out there that are associated with some area fire agencies that provide some of that support. So I'm not confident that the fire department rather staffs anybody specifically fair as a result of some of those other volunteer efforts being done.
Okay.
Yeah,
Chief Kopp?
That's correct. That's correct. The past multiple years, I don't know how many it's been, but we've worked in collaboration with area departments, and I believe it's Croninwood Fire Department that heads it up and gets volunteers to come down and provide first aid, and then we provide them ambulance service, so they'll call and give us an update and let us know where we're going to pick up a patient if that's the case, and we transport. So we do not man the fair. But the other events, such as Wings Over Wausau, and that there is a cost, that overtime cost that comes with that for us also, not to the extent of the police department, but there is a significant overtime cost for the fire department. And we need to rely on another department to help us a lot of times too, because of the staffing required to be there.
If I could, as Chief Kopp had said, for Wings Over Wausau, so per the FAA, we are required, because of the aircraft stunts and everything else, that we do have to have a certain level of fire and EMS on staff. Or on site, I should say, so that they can respond, and that response is a very tight window, obviously, if we have an aircraft go down or something happen. They did cover a majority of it for Wings this year. One of the days, I think there was it Safer, Chief Kopp, I think that was there, and we paid that. We did pay that bill for that, so that bill did not come to the city of Wausau. So if there was not enough staffing with the Wausau Fire Department, and they had to use a mutual aid department, we did end up paying that bill. So just thought I'd add that.
Jeremy, can you I just have one more question. When you said that, there's significant overtime for these, and that you had to have mutual aid, was that for covering Wausau, or was that what was just talked about?
No, that was just asking the neighboring department to come and help us staff the Wings Over Wausau, just because we don't have enough units to take out of service for that period of time. And we still want to be able to serve, our city in the capacity that we do every day, all day.
Yep.
So we just use the extra vehicles that we may have. And then if we are short, we would have to rely on another department, which is why Wausau Events and Wausau Fire Department asked Safer to assist us in that staffing with another engine and another ambulance.
Okay.
Okay.
So with Workday, we did establish a special events account for Public Works because they do a lot of special events services, and in '23, there were $30,363 in their special events cost center, and the overtime in that cost I mentioned was $5,760.
So this ticket fee could actually recover more than just police fees, but also fire and DPW, I would imagine.
I think, as we talk about this, whichever way it goes, this budget cycle, I just think this needs a further conversation, because if this goes up every year, and we have to remember too, these events aren't just, people from City of Wausau are not just going to these events, right? I mean, this is, community-wide events, people from Weston, people from Marshfield, whatever. So I'm all for having events and helping, keeping the downtown lively, but I've heard before, this isn't, I will tell you, this has not been unnoticed by people because of, seeing the increased police. I know through my neighborhood groups and things like that, they've talked about, the overtime and things like that, and is this straining our resources? It isn't, of what I understand, it's not straining our resources, but significant overtime. This is what, Jeremy's saying significant overtime, police significant overtime. That adds up. That adds to our budget a lot. And while we want that, I think we need a little help. I think that, we keep talking about our budget being so strict, and so, we're under pressure. I just think that we just can't keep giving away services. It's just not the way of the world anymore, as we need more and more staffing for all of these events.
Okay, so I guess general consensus, do we want to put this in our, in the column to consider for, to try to get under expenditure restraint?
Well, there's two different ones here.
So I think we're kind of focused on the ticketed events. And
Yeah, that's what I would think, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the non-ticketed events will, at the very least, we're going to pass this year on it, so.
And really, this wouldn't help with expenditure restraint. I mean, it reduces the levy and it reduces the tax rate, but it doesn't, it would be a revenue, I think, of the general fund. And so then that isn't part of the expenditure restraint, unfortunately, calculation.
Okay.
It's the expenses of the general fund, the levy of all the other funds. I know, again, not my rules.
So that really wouldn't help us.
No,
at
it
all.
would, I mean, it definitely helps with the tax rate and the tax levy, but it wouldn't help with expenditure restraint,
Okay,
unfortunately.
okay. So we'd have to find some other method if we wanted to.
Yeah. I could try to figure out how to have, I mean, you could do things, right? Like allocate the police expenses to a special events fund.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, for Public Works, we created a cost center. So whenever the staff at Public Works are working on an event on their timesheet, they put, this is the event. So I can tell you from Public Works standpoint, how much they spent on Wings Over Wausau, how much they spent on the Christmas parade. I can itemize all of those in 4 seconds.
Okay.
But we do not have, the police department and fire use a different payroll system as far as tracking their time that doesn't load that type of data into Workday. So we don't have that
We don't have those
as
cost centers.
accessible. And I think Parks probably has it. I don't know if you have it by event yet. Do you have it broken down by event yet? We do for.
So could we?
We could definitely work at that, and we are looking to migrate at some point to a different time and attendance system for police and fire, and so that could be on the top of the list or one of the things that we want to achieve,
But probably wouldn't be helpful for this year's budget.
right? Because it all would have to be manually entered for, in the time and attendance system. And I think right now, PD, when they're keeping track of their time, they just say special event. They don't say what event.
Yes, that's correct. And in Teletime right now, we have an overtime code that's special event overtime, but it doesn't parse it out like that, specific to an event. Now, our administrative lieutenant, Joe Kurtzels, does track all of that in spreadsheets, but it's not, you just described it. There is this sort of barrier that is impeding our ability to look at that right now.
Okay. Okay. So, do we want to stay with this? Do we want to, or otherwise we're going to have to find other, it's good on a cost recovery standpoint, but we're going to have to, it sounds like we're going to have to find other places to cut if we wanted to move those 2 officers, or we keep them in the grants fund for this year, and that's something we work towards next year. So,
Yeah, I think we need to work on the accounting, and let's get this, let's try to figure that out.
yeah,
That's my vote. I don't have a vote.
we'll work on I think what the mayor's saying is we'll work on the accounting system so that we can make the public safety charge work for ticketed events, work on an expenditure restraint standpoint. On an overall budgetary standpoint, it's good, but it doesn't get us below the state thresholds. But we could get below the state thresholds if we do shuffle those those officers back over to grants.
Right.
Grant funded.
So how far are we now? What do we need to do yet?
So we didn't really talk about some of those expenses that were on the top
Right.
of the list. Those obviously would be the ones that would help the general fund. So the 44,000 of parking definitely helped because that reduced levy in the parking fund. So 44,000. And then if you wanted to look at like the elimination of the membership in US mayors, I realize it's only $3,800. Moving how we fund the loan software.
Well, those top three, yeah, the loan
Yeah.
software and the window cleaning, if we were to take those, then we're in the neighborhood of almost $20,000. 19,000, it looks like.
Right.
Plus the 44,000, so that would be 53,000.
Yep.
Excuse me,
And then I have it down.
63,000.
Yeah.
And those sound like pretty much, those top three items, US Mayor's membership, the loan software, and the window cleaning that's low-hanging expenses again.
What about the postpone hiring vacant? Is that help when we postpone? We do that a lot.
Yeah, it will help us meet the expenditure restraint, though next year, once that position is full, we have to fund it for the full
Yeah.
year. And so it is a temporary help.
Okay.
Well,
But if you, like, in theory, if you picked a position every year to defer, you'd solve that problem.
it's vacant right now, and I'm guessing with the 19,000, that just postpones it, through the first quarter of the year then?
Yeah.
Or if that, so 63 plus another 19 is 82,000, so we're halfway there.
But a half a year of, an assistant city attorney, I think that office is pretty much overworked. I think they have municipal court, they have leases, contracts. That's why we initiated that the third attorney in that office to begin with several years ago. I feel here we look at the fire, I keep coming back to the fire department and that great expense, and then we can't afford to look for our third city attorney. I think we have to, and I'm sorry to go on, but I think the city hall presents itself to the citizens of the city of Wausau, and how do we present ourselves with windows that are not, with a city hall that is not clean and representing the whole city of Wausau. I think that we're presenting this building to the city and to the metro area, and I think that we should do our utmost to maintain it to its highest quality. I think that keeping the windows is part of that. Thank you.
All right, Mayor?
The city attorney has another event tonight, was unable to attend, but Mary Ann Grote and I did sit down with the city attorney, and she felt that this was one she could work through. We have a few things that are outside source as necessary, so we have that as a backup. But she felt she could get through a good portion of the year with postponing that hire.
Is the position, is it already been posted, or?
No.
I
That
mean, where are we
position,
in the
we've-
process?
We've held 2 interviews over the last year, roughly, 8 months or so, 2 different sessions, and we were unable to come up with a viable candidate. We did have one, and ended up going to another location. So there is a pool of people potentially out there, but we were not successful the first time around.
Because I'm guessing $20,000, that doesn't cover us more than a couple months
Right.
into the year.
2.5 months.
And if we're still in the hiring process, I mean, it's almost no, Yeah.
I wouldn't anticipate filling that even if we started right now in 6 months. So I mean, it's,
If we repost it now, it's not going to get full until after, March 1st, so at the end of February.
right.
And that's something we've done in previous years in order to balance things, is we've deferred hiring, into the second quarter, third, or third quarter or whatnot, so. If the attorney's office is okay with that, that might be a viable item. Any others? The Dragon Natural Speaking Software, I know the police department highlighted this, 6750. It sounds like in their narrative, it has a low utilization rate. So is that something that you find beneficial, or?
I might ask Captain Graham to speak to that. That was kind of his baby for a while there. This was a dictation software that we have.
Yeah, in theory, talking is faster than typing, right? But we have seen a low utilization rate year over year. So what you see here, I think it was $6,500, is for just the ongoing maintenance of that, which I think would come due in 2025. My understanding is that if we forego paying that, we can still use Dragon, but it just won't be supported any longer. So my recommendation would be to forego that additional expense year over year.
Okay. And this is something too, I know with the integration with the body cameras and the dash cams and all that, isn't there also a component that has automatic transcription, or?
So there is, to a certain degree. We're actually demoing a new software product that they have right now, which is an AI-generated report writing software. That comes with a pretty decent price tag right now, but aside from that, yes, they have auto transcription available. We are currently receiving 100 minutes per year per pro license that we have with Axon, so that comes out to like 9,600 minutes a year. That's really helpful for our investigators that are using it to kind of transcribe longer interviews and things like that. That is a time saver. Is it conceivable that maybe somewhere down the road we may want to look at looking at purchasing the auto transcription like fully, like the full suite of it, to turn it on for every recording? Potentially. I think we would need to do some more looking into that to see what kind of time savings we could realize and see if that would offset the cost of that. But yes, to answer your question, those technologies are existing in the Axon contract that we have, and we are utilizing them to some extent.
Okay. Right now you've got, average of 1 hour per year per person using the Dragon software. So maybe that's an item that can be, I'm seeing nods here, so. Okay.
What is decrease overtime budget under the police of 20,000? I'm not quite sure what that is.
Let me get to the right page here. So really, all of these proposals were made with a desire that the general member of the public isn't going to notice a reduction in services. It's not going to impact our delivery of those services. So this one, again, it seems sort of opposed to a previous topic that we discussed, where we're using a lot of overtime to staff some events. But this would represent about a 5% reduction in our overtime budget. In talking with Chief Barnes on this, he shared some thoughts with me, and it's my understanding that this is a new administration, and he's comfortable that we can make this happen by making some more mindful decisions and being much more judicious about when we're authorizing overtime. Now, that means that we will be working closely with our supervisors to ensure that we have an equitable implementation of that across the department. But, can a report be done later? Do we need that report done right now? Can we function for a little while with fewer staff until this individual comes in if somebody had to go home sick, things of that nature? I mean, all these things are often call volume dependent and things of that nature, but we're confident that we can do that and make that happen.
Any discussion on the overtime? Sounds like I'm seeing nods, like we want to add that to the list.
Yep, so right now, just to
Yeah.
update, it looks like we're about $99,000. So the 20 of overtime, the 38 for the mayor's conference, 5 for the software, the Dragon Natural Speaking, the 44,000 for the elimination of the one free parking ticket, and I have the city attorney savings in here of 19,000, so that brings us to 98. So
98?
I did not put the window cleaning because Gary likes clean windows.
Gonna clean windows. I get clean, yep. No, I get that. Windows, I hate dirty windows too.
I don't clean my windows every year at home, sorry.
I'll just add, I mean, one of the first things I did when I sat in my chair here is Lou tapped me on the shoulder and said, look how dirty the building is outside. So, yeah, I'm okay. I agree with Gary there.
Okay. Don't come to my house.
Oh, yeah, or my house. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe if we enact the public safety charge for ticketed events, that could help offset the overtime too.
That's
So
true.
that might be sort of a fallback. So we're at 99,000. That's like halfway.
Yeah, so
So-
it's one officer.
Yeah.
So they have to be in the expense statement.
In the general fund, yes.
Or if they're in a,
If they're in one of the other funds, like parking or recycling or
so like in the.
animal control, then it's the levy. So if you make more money, if you have more revenues in any of those funds, then that saves us
So.
on the expenditure
like
restraint.
revenue increases, like the bill for fire services or
No.
modified township rates, those aren't.
No, because they would all be in the general fund. The other
Okay.
thing I was going to point out about the fire services, I believe that is one of the provisions in the state statutes that say if we increase that fee, we have to decrease our levy by the same amount, similar to garbage. So, I mean, it increases the diversification of revenues, but we'd have to reduce the levy by the same amount.
Okay, okay. I think the
That is part of the state statute.
chief cop, you got something to say, or are you just,
No, I was just
okay,
being available.
okay, we caught your attention then.
That was going to be one of my main questions with that line item is I think that's a great service, and along the same line is the city's paying a lot for surrounding areas benefit. And in the back of my mind, I thought for sure there was some state rule or that we could only charge so much per run or whatever, but if there's any way to increase that, I would be all for that.
You're talking about the bill for fire services?
For the township rates?
For the township.
Oh, the
Yeah,
townships.
that you could do without reducing your levy. It's just the fire services. So like if we respond to a fire event, we can bill for it, but we would have to reduce our levy by that same amount
Okay, so.
if that became a new fee.
Sure. So
But
then I
not
guess maybe a
municipal.
question for Jeremy is where did that number come from, the 29,140?
Are you talking for the EMS billing?
No, that's
No.
for your township rates, adjusting your township rates. Jeremy?
Yes. Yep, so that's just taking per capita of each town that we serve right now for ambulance and taking up to $7.50 per capita from where we're at right now, that would be the increase along with the $50 processing fee. That's where the 29, that would be an extra 29,140. Where these numbers I didn't just guess at them. I did talk with area departments that give the same services, and they just went up to $7.50 per capita. There's cities down south that are significantly higher than that per capita, so it's a very good rate for our townships, and it's would increase our revenue a little bit and keep us right in line with what other services around us are charging. They are not charging the $50 processing fee, however, so.
Are there, so that's just based on what's in the area? There aren't rules saying how much we can actually charge there, like if we went to 8?
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. You just need to sign a contract with them, and, you know, the only reason I put that is, you know, if we keep the number the same or close to it, like you said, 8 probably isn't gonna affect much. There's always the risk of losing one of our townships to another service. So that's the only thing to keep in mind, depending on where you take your numbers.
Okay, thank you. I just think that's a great service that, again, along the same lines that the city people are paying a lot, and people just outside the city are reaping all the rewards for that and paying less. So I really see that as an opportunity for us.
Yeah. Now, Jeremy, this is different than mutual aid assistance, correct? That we do,
Correct.
that's something that we do free.
Yeah, mutual aid, the MABUS system is a statewide system that all departments do to help each other, and that there's no charges for that unless it's a hazardous materials response.
But this is something that we say, like, we offer assistance to the town of Wausau for like a med call or something.
Yes.
Okay.
So they know that they're always gonna have an ambulance response, so typically their fire departments provide first responders who drive in their own vehicle to the house that's having the medical emergency, and they provide first aid until we get there in the ambulance, and then we take over as a paramedic level service and then transport them to a hospital.
Okay. But that won't affect,
Right. It would reduce your levy.
we'd reduce our levy, but not our,
Right.
not our expenditure restraint.
Right.
I still think it's a win. And I totally agree with Chad Alder-Hinkie. We can't, residents of the city of Wausau, either a taxpayer or renter, can't keep subsidizing outside, outside municipalities. We can't have people go, well, I have cheaper taxes in the town of Wausau, but I get city of Wausau ambulance service, and we're looking at adding, EMTs, we're looking at firefighters, all to bolster our service. So I think that I think that all these type of fees should be looked at regularly and make sure that, we want to help people, but we also need, to reimburse the city for that service.
Exactly, so, okay.
And if I could add one more thing, a lot of times, whether it's in the city or outside of the city, a lot of what we bill is not fully refunded or paid, especially when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid. They determine how much they're gonna pay, and so, if we bill, for instance, I think the last number I heard was $6 million in a year, we're lucky if we just get over $1 million back in revenue. So this is kind of a different way of looking at it, because this isn't billing, because they're still gonna get an ambulance bill from our billing company if they use our service. This is just a contract service that we will be there for you throughout the year. If that makes sense.
Yep, it does, exactly.
Yeah, but just back to the point, it's our services are the best in the area, I think, and I just hear too many people buying a house across the street to avoid the taxes, but, ooh, I still get the same services. That rubs me the wrong way, so,
Okay.
thanks.
So, really, we've almost gotten to the point where if we want to get under the expenditure restraint by keeping these 2 police officers in the general fund, there is only a couple options left on the expense side, and that's eliminate the animal control program at 75,554 and decrease and reduce CSO hours at 29,764.
So how about the sale of the boat, Mary Ann? Is that not,
The airboat?
does that not count? We're reducing
So,
capital.
I mean, yeah, I don't
item
know how much the
expense.
fire department pays in motor pool charges for the boat on an annual basis. I mean, you would get the sale, but the sale would show up in motor pool fund, the revenue would, and then you would reduce your rental rate for that boat, and in the motor pool, we'd reduce maintenance type expenses. But I don't know what that would mean.
I think I saw
Right.
something in here.
Solomon has, may know what the rental rate is on the airboat,
Are you looking for a specific number? I can pull one up.
if you can.
Yep, I got it right here.
Oh, nice.
I thought there was something in the narrative here, but I'm sure that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it here. I do have it. Did I hear Solomon's voice?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's in the room.
I do believe it was it 20,000 a year, Solomon? With repairs and maintenance?
I thought the number that stuck in my head was 16, but. Here it is. Annual maintenance costs $14,000 per year, repairs and fuel $26,000.
But that also does not include the rental rate for it. But that's all kind of built in. I'm just waiting for my stuff to load here.
Okay. Well, let's get the official numbers from Solomon then on the airboat.
Yeah, the boat is a nice service, but it's very expensive. We just had to have the props sent out. We worked with the airport, our local municipal airport, and they recommended a repair service out in California that we had to send the props out because anytime that they hit water and they shatter, they have to be maintained. Just got to get the right number here. Yep, and when it hits, I mean, at that speed, water is practically a solid, so.
Jeremy, how much use do you get out of that boat for rescue?
Well, I was just gonna add for something that's not in the narrative is since we purchased it in February of 2017, we've gone to 26 incidents. And we purchased the boat for 74,400. So I think I'm a little high saying that we could get 75 for it.
Right.
When I was looking online. But out of those 26 incidents, that doesn't mean that it was successfully used either. So there's the idea of it's a great tool to have, but is it worth its weight in gold? And that's the decision that we all have to make. Like, if we have the mindset that if it saves one life, then it's worth it, well, then the boat's worth it. But, we do have other ways of maneuvering ourselves into tough areas, such as swamps, rapids, rocks, ice, and all those other things. So it is a nice tool in that regard, but we can still maneuver with other ways, and there's other options out there to purchase if we need to. And it's not quite as expensive as an airboat.
So we bill the fire department $1,168 a month for them to have that boat available to them. That includes the maintenance of that boat. That's a true cost value for cost of ownership. That also includes depreciation value for them to replace that boat when it's out of its life. So that is what the savings would be to the fire department. The sale of the boat would be a motor pool revenue because we own it.
So that would be about $14,000 a year plus the sale of the boat.
Right. And this, like I said, the sales should show up in the motor pool fund because that's where we're recording sales of the fleet that motor pool is maintaining.
Okay. And would that would count then?
The 14,000
The
would.
14,000 would, but not the sale of the boat?
Right.
Okay.
And that would be, you know, a one-time revenue similar, so it wouldn't serve long-term.
There's no cost to continue, there's no
Right.
continuance on that, so. Okay. Anything else here? This list is getting pretty lean, so.
Just a question.
Yeah.
I know Alder Gisselman brought up cutting streets, so any cut we made from the capital, how would that affect?
So we're borrowing for the street projects. The other projects, we are paying cash for, so a roof or something. Again, you're just decreasing the amount that you would have available in 26's budget, because we're only paying cash for capital, I think it's like $517,000 a year. So we're hardly paying cash for any of our capital right now.
Sure.
So,
So like
I'm just new to all this and
Yeah.
seeing how they all work together.
sidewalk
so.
projects or asphalt overlay.
all
that's-
of those are funded with debt.
Yeah, so, okay. It's not a general fund item, so,
No, unfortunately,
yeah. And that's the same with the facilities too,
yes.
like the chimney liner and et cetera.
Yes.
So, okay.
Well, the chimney liner, actually, we are paying cash for, but again, then next year, you'll have that much less cash
Yeah.
to fund your projects with.
Okay. Okay.
And the goal would be to be able to make changes that are sustainable over time.
Yep, absolutely. So. All right. Which brings us to, the other two big items, yeah, animal control. So, and I know that's kind of a hot button. We spent the last 6 months
Yeah.
debating that, so it looks like Deputy Chief, you're itching to say something.
I don't know if I'm itching to.
I know, this is.
Not sure that's the right, but we'll roll with that. You're exactly right. I mean, considerable time and energy was expended to reinvent the animal control, what that looks like here in the city from the Wausau Police Department. That undertaking was taken on at the direction of members of council from committee, and so that was prior to a directive given to really seriously look hard and long for a way to find 2.5% worth of cuts. And so we're at a different time right now. And again, I guess I'll just reiterate that in looking at all of these and in vetting these ideas, our real desire was that the average member of the community is not going to notice a reduction in services. So, for the last year, our officers have been filling this role anyway. Like, we've been responding to all of these animal calls. Nothing would really change. We would just continue on doing that if this were to be cut. If I may propose a potential hybrid alternative of this, which is, okay, if it's $75 or $75,000, what if we took $20,000 of that to augment CSO hours to assist with animal control, and then realize a savings of $55,000. So I think that additional $20,000 to assist with CSO budget and specific to animal control would allow for more of those kind of off-time coverage, a weekend coverage, maybe some evening coverage as well. If I'm missing anything, I know Captain Seiler is here and he can maybe clarify some of my comments. He's probably back there going, "You are butchering this, what my intention here was." But.
Yeah, I wouldn't have much to augment that, other than, I mean, like with anything, we talk with our staff, what are you looking for, and how would this impact our staff as well as in terms of that service. So, yeah, when you look at a given year, that you look at the number of hours in a year, hours in a week, and how much coverage there was with animal control staff or officers, even over the last decade, still have taken the majority of the calls, so they're experienced with that. So they're saying, well, if we were to take that on, we would be okay. If you ask them, would we like those additional staff to help with those calls? Absolutely, they would like to have that, and they would like to have more assistance during evening and weekend hours, and they would welcome, as they had the proposal that we had. But as Deputy Chief pointed out, they're used to having 100% of that coverage, 24/7, 365 days a year. They've done it. So if they're saying, if you have to take something away from us, we'll be okay. I mean, they're not going to rebel on that. And we sat on the shift briefing just tonight talking about that as well. If you ask them, would you like 24/7, 365 people for parking and parking complaints and overnight parking and assistance with that, they'd say yes, we would welcome that. But again, it's something that they've been used to doing. Night shift forever has had 100% of animal control. So if you talk to anybody working in that, they've never had people to augment them in that. I worked night shift for 8 years when I first started out. And it is nice, like anything else we've had here. We would like to provide that service. We'll continue to provide the service. We would like the assistance, but if we have to let go of something, our officers would adjust accordingly.
All right, anything from the committee on this? I know this is kind of a hot potato. We've spent all this energy to redefine the animal control program, and I think there's probably a certain amount of will in the council to want to see what the modified, or what the new animal control program would look like, and if we were just to cut it right away, would that, would that be the proper thing to do? So. Yeah, not seeing a whole lot of.
So this would be different than what we voted on 2-3 months ago. This would eliminate those officers that were
This
taking
would
over.
eliminate the 3 CSOs,
dedicated, okay.
3 part-time CSOs year-round to provide animal control specific. So,
Would it eliminate the humane officer training? Because that was a big deal.
I can speak to that. Our two, when we put that training offer out there for our sworn staff, we had a list of people who were interested in wanting to go to that. So we had room within our training budget to send 2 this year. They attended third week of September. Those 2 officers, Officer Jenna Zinkwich and Clara Strusky, both have come back from the training. They're on opposite shifts. And again, that's more tailored towards another resource for crimes against animals investigations. So we have those going, and we anticipate we have other people who are interested that we would send next year as well. They have additional sworn staff with that crimes against animals type of training. But you stated it correctly. It's whether we have that additional resource to augment officer time going to do things like stray animal pickups and loose dogs and things of that nature. Our staff, in talking with them, we talk about animal complaints, and we threw a lot of data out there about a historical animal complaints. When you talk with our officers about the reality, when you break those down, the vast majority of animal complaints, it's less so dealing with handling actual animals. It's working with the people, right? It's ordinance violations, people not being in compliance, the animals getting loose for whatever reason, or a neighbor issue because the neighbor doesn't agree with the standard of care that this pet owner is giving. So our officers are naturally are good with that, right? They're very well versed and skilled at mediating and mitigating things between people when it comes to animals. So that's another component of it that I don't think we really touched on, but we look at number of animal complaints, but really a fraction of those deal with handling of animals. But our officers have a lot of experience on doing that. But again, they'll certainly accept the help if it's available.
Okay, thoughts? Mary, it looks like you got something to say, or you're just thinking?
Not necessarily on this topic. I know Mary Ann's set aside more time or for another meeting, so we could have an extra meeting if you wanted to let some of this stuff simmer, because I know you haven't had a lot of time on it, but
Unless we can, would that give us a chance to come up with more wiggle room in some other spot of the budget too? Because we're at, what was it, 98,000 plus 14 for the airboat, must be,
well, we've had
112, so.
everyone has had an opportunity here. Director Polly's still here. There's three items, maybe one easier than the other two, if we want to take a look at that. Or is that?
All right, well, if we want to discuss these quickly, yeah. I mean, we got three items here from Parks. Eliminate flower baskets downtown, which I'm guessing is the easy one. And eliminate Sylvan Hill operations or close one pool. So Gary, it looks like.
No.
I know it's.
I was saying it just depends on who you talk to with regard to the flower baskets, that's all.
I have heard a lot about how the flower baskets make the downtown nice, and a lot of people will miss them. So I'll just add that comment in there. I have heard about that from people.
I know it's. Yeah, I talked to my wife about the flower baskets, and she said, "Yeah, it's one of those things that."
And just with Foundry on Third going in and us trying to promote the downtown and keep it looking nice, like I think, I think it's
And
it's the little things that differentiate us from other areas.
Yeah, and I think it's not so much the cost of the baskets themselves, but it's just the maintenance, the watering, that's the expensive part. So if you were to eliminate the basket, if you were to, yes, I think it's personnel 4,900, supplies 9,600, fixed charge 650. So I guess maybe it is supplies. Maybe the baskets themselves are the expensive part. So.
Is that just downtown or just the east side? Or I know there's a lot of baskets on the west side too. Would that be all the hanging baskets? Okay. And is it just the east side or west side river district area? Is that where they are? Okay.
They are nice. So, eliminate Sylvan Hill. I mean, it's, you look at I find it interesting when we look at this, these are two big amenities that the city of Wausau provides, the Sylvan Hill tubing run and our municipal pools or water facilities. And we take a loss on both of these items. It's, the admission fees don't cover the cost of operating both of these venues. But as a policy, these are one of those quality of life things. I think that's very important to the residents in our community. And if we were to eliminate one or both of those, they would be sorely missed. And I think that's just one of the hidden items. When we talk about our tax rates, and this is the reason why, is because we provide these services that are that other communities, speaking in regard to Sylvan Hill, other communities don't have. So I'm guessing. Anybody else have anything to chime in on those, or is like the flower pots, is that sort of a non-starter? All right, otherwise.
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
So does the park committee look at, I'm sure that that fee schedule has been looked at already, and that's all, with regard to fees, Sylvan Hill, and, because that was,
For like admission
fees-
rates and,
athletic park, the variety of fees that we charge the parks, I'm sure that that has already been calculated into the 2025 budget. And I really don't want to deal with another, even skating rinks in the city. I've dealt with that issue many times, and I know that's a very valuable thing within the community, as well as Sylvan Hills. The issues that, were, but I was mostly leading on towards the individual fees and charges for Sylvan Hills and that type of thing, but I'm sure that that has already been taken care of in preparation for the 2025 budget.
Yes, we did have the Parks Committee look at the fee schedule 2 meetings ago and set it for next year. I mean, it's always something we can look at. I'll never forget my very first day on the job 6.5 years ago was my Parks Committee meeting where the committee was talking about making the pools all free. And I came in, I thought, oh my, what? No. But we have raised the fees by $1 since that time, so it's minimal amount. Just the admission fees, we try to make our passes affordable. And we're trying to raise money for our scholarship program to make it more affordable, but that is always something that can be directed going forward as far as, we look at our fees every year, but if we wanted to increase fees, it is a way to do it. We do increase our shelter reservation fees by 3% every year for all of our facilities, county and city. And then our facility uses like our ball fields and stuff like that. We will be going through a whole study again in 2025 of our fees all over the board. And I think this is a discussion that our committees will have as far as services we provide. We'll put them into categories and we'll have you decide what categories are for the general good, quality of life type of activities that we should be providing that maybe aren't as much cost recovery, and then what do we provide that should be 100% cost recovery, and then we'll put everything in between there, and that's how we'll also readjust our fees. It was a workshop I went to that was very valuable, and I think we need to do that here on both the city and the county side of it, because you're right, for what you consider cost of quality of life is not probably going to generate a lot of revenue, but those that benefit the individual, we want to recover those costs. So, more to come.
okay. Mayor?
Yeah, question. When Director Pauly brought the Sylvan Hill one to us, it partly had to do with the math and in the winter we had last year. Could you explain the math and how that, because that one is really upside down with how much it costs to generate snow in a bad snow producing year?
Yes. Right. And when we were doing the numbers in a good snow year, when we get snowfall to help us with the snowmaking, we pretty much break even. So then we don't have a big loss on it. But a year like last year and then 2 winters ago, where we had about 2-week cold snap, we were able to get our guns working and making snow for about 7 days. And then it became warm. So we had one hill up and running or close to it. And then we waited, and we could only make snow. When it's cold enough, we have 3 shifts going of 2 full-time employees constantly making snow, but it's all based on the temperature. The temperature isn't conducive. So last year it took us 52 days to make enough snow to open the entire facility. 2 years ago, prior to that, it took us 54 days. So you think that we start in November, as soon as it gets cold, we didn't have it fully open until January, so that hurts. If we have a good snowfall, ideally we want to be open early December and take it all the way through March.
Did you fire the guns up last night?
No,
I-
maybe
I-
we should.
I know the people up on Rim Mountain, and apparently they did some test runs and made some snow last night.
Yeah, I
so-
saw Green Mountain, we had the
Yeah.
guns going last night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
we might have to look at that. You know, and that this last year was even with 2 guns. 2 years ago, we only had 1 gun, so we added a gun to the system. But yeah, I mean, we need to start thinking about that.
I think it was more of a marketing thing and
Yeah.
getting people excited, but
Yeah. You kind of have to watch, because if you make snow and then it all
yeah.
melts, then
Yeah,
it's a waste
gonna
of
be-
time too,
It's going to
so.
be gone, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was more of a test run stunt, so,
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing, but definitely got people's attention.
Yeah, I mean, if we were weathermen and we could know that we're not going to get any snow and we have a winter like last year, I would say we would just decide now not to open Sylvan Hill, and then we wouldn't have that loss and that staff time when we could reallocate our resources. But you never know. You hope it gets cold enough, so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay, anything else? We're kind of, I don't know.
I'm going to just go back to this leaf pickup.
Yeah.
Is this eliminating it, Eric, altogether? I know there was some discussion at the last session about taking, and Dustin was a little concerned about just not doing the first run.
Yeah, so the 189,000 that we put together is eliminating the
Names.
collection, but then we would still have our yard waste site where people could bring
Right.
it to, stuff like that. So that's how you'd get the full 189.
Okay. There
so-
wouldn't be any savings from like reducing your pickups?
Well, if we, like, let's say, reduced the baler and just collected what we could with the vacuums, obviously that would save the rental cost and staff time running the baler, stuff like that. Unfortunately, I don't know how much we're gonna save as far, because like, we still gotta, then how do we decide who gets the vac truck and who don't? Because we can't, there's no way we're gonna cover the whole city, so then it's just gonna be like spot picking up where the biggest piles are, I guess, or something.
I think, this is probably the service we provide that gives the most complaints and phone calls, right, throughout
Yeah.
the city. And so, the one thing that you could look at doing is saying that, look, every year, we're gonna start this about October 20th, and we're gonna end it, right, at November 15th, let's say, right? So those are the weeks, and if the leaves aren't down when we come through here, then you're done, right? Then you're on your own. So, but, you have to understand that, it's gonna, if we're there and we're somewhere else a week later and all their leaves come down that week, that's the issue. And if, in like past years, if snow comes in early November, right, and we have to get out and plow, we're gonna push all the leaves back up on the boulevard, right? That also creates things as well. So if that's something you'd like us to look at, we certainly can, and maybe that would save us some money. We would just say that this is our 3.5 week time frame. We try to put all of our resources towards it just for that period of time, and we'll try to set that schedule week by week for that 4-week time frame for the city, and then residents would have to know that if, no matter what the weather is and stuff, if you're missed, you're missed, and
The only thing, I mean, would we then, what if they put out leaves, and this is part of the problem, that
Yep.
you've dealt with it every year, I have as well, put out leaves afterwards because they didn't get to it and expect the city to come through. How would we deal with that? That's what
we'd almost have to look at the ordinance and probably have some sort of enforcement on that. Like if we've gone through already and somebody continues to put leaves out, then we would have to somehow be able to enforce them. Just like if somebody, we come through on a plow and somebody takes all their snow and blows it out in the street, right? Yeah.
I guess my question would be, it's, we run the vacuum truck, then the baler, then the vacuum truck again. What if we eliminate that first vacuum truck like we used to do back prior 4 or 5 years ago? Would there be a cost savings there?
I would say it'd be very minimal,
Yeah.
because we typically have staff out, the supervisors or even, some crew leads, and they're just kind of looking through the community, like, hey, are there leaves down? Do people have them piled? Can the vac truck get to certain areas, But like early on now, you see that the sweepers are out, they're cleaning the gutters because the leaves are starting to come down and stuff, so we want to keep the streets clean, keep it out of the storm sewer, so.
All right.
So would you like us to look at that and see if we just narrowed it down to a 3-week time frame in the fall and
And then I
see
think
what that
for 2025, I think the important thing is to get way out in front so that people really know, maybe even this year, so that there's no surprises to them and they know that they're going to have to be dealing with that, because I think sometimes the city isn't, presenting these issues, and I think that that's part of the issues of this budget. And I think that when city, at the end of the day, when we pass the budget, I think the people have to start realizing that that's one of the things that's going to be happening next year. I think we have to have an obligation to get out in front of that so that the people know that, and then it's their responsibility.
Yeah. I will throw this out, depending on how that looks in 25, if that's what the council would like to do. We do have some additional space, property down by the Yardway site that might be a capital project that we'd have to do if we start seeing an influx of a lot more leaves and things that we have to manage at the Yardway site and haul out because people are bringing them in versus us picking them up. Then we might have to expand that Yardway site. So that could be a future project that would have to happen as well. So just.
Okay. So there's always unintended consequences, I guess.
Just, Eric, since you're up here,
Yep.
back to the stormwater.
Yeah.
We were going to do a study for the stormwater utility?
Yeah, one's going on right now. We think that there'll be a presentation available in January, hopefully, for the council.
Okay.
And I do, going back to Mary Ann's point, right? Trying to diversify the revenue and where things are coming in to help even out, some of these projects. Like, the discussion was on Randolph Street. Why is it so expensive, right? Well, the majority of it is that storm sewer, right? And so a storm sewer utility and generating, having people just pay for storm sewer, especially the people that don't pay for it, right? The hospitals, the churches, the nonprofits, right? Currently they don't pay, it's really on the backs of the residents that are paying for stormwater.
Or the people with massive stormwaters,
That's
like
correct.
stores and.
Yes,
Sure.
yeah. So,
Definitely, that's something we're going to need to revisit.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
we
it's
voted on,
coming,
I know
yeah,
we voted on it and I hadn't
yeah.
heard anything for a while, so
yeah,
it's just.
Well, I
since you're
appreciate
up
you
there.
bringing it up.
Okay. So,
Do we want to quickly talk about these? Both police and fire mentioned a couple of revenue sources, one being vehicle lockout. I think in the description that the police gave, they said they were the only department that's doing it for free right now. Is that right? So again, it's not going to help with the expenditure restraint, but it would reduce the levy. And
Yeah.
then we also have the false alarm modifying the rates if, for maybe the sixth, that's a graduated schedule too, where the more false alarms you have, the higher your rate is. And I think fire had a similar issue with reinspection.
Re-inspections, yeah.
And then they also had using the lockout assistance. So those are, 26, 50, I don't know, I have to add it up.
I might have got
I
up
lost it.
prematurely, but if you have questions, I can address those first two items, the vehicle lockout one and then the false alarm response, if you like.
Well, the vehicle lockouts, it's, I guess, and I know the police department has done that for years,
Yeah.
at free of charge, and it's, I guess I find it a little bit surprising that we're competing with locksmiths and, providing a service, where you have 50-50 chance you would call a locksmith and they'd probably would charge you $75, $100 to do the same thing that we do for free.
Yeah, that's our understanding as well. To our knowledge, we're the only law enforcement agency still in the area that provides the service free of charge, and I think it's a nice service. I think it's a good thing that we've done. We've been doing it as long as I've been here. We have the equipment in the cars that allows officers to make a really good effort. I'm not saying they're 100% at getting the cars open, but if, to your point, if you were to call a locksmith, you're probably going to pay anywhere between $50, $60 up to $150, depending on time of day. So the thought was, well, what if we attached a surcharge to that? We could come and unlock that car. Obviously, if we're not successful, there's not going to be a charge with that. And I think there'd be some other things also. If there's a child in the car, I mean, we respond to those things. That's not uncommon, where there are some mitigating factors where we want to get into that car to help those individuals. But if we look at numbers from 2023, CAD call shows that we responded to 648 calls of vehicle lockouts. So again, if there was a surcharge associated with that, whether it's $40, $20, if it's 40, that's about a $25,000 revenue enhancement using those 2023 numbers. And obviously half of that if you were to drop it down or scale it however you felt appropriate. So that was that one in concept.
Okay. My only concern with some of these, when we start charging for these kind of services is we want to make sure that we cover our cost of collection. Otherwise, it might be $40 for a logout, but if it costs us X number of dollars to process the invoice and the payment, and then it doesn't, it's not worth it anymore on a regulatory standpoint. So, any discussion on that? Anybody have any feelings on lockouts? It'd be the same with the fire department. They're using their lockout system to open up buildings, houses, so, which then again, a professional locksmith would be able to do. Sounds like add that to the list.
Okay.
It doesn't reduce our expenditure restraint, but it does
Right.
impact the levy, so.
So if we implemented all of those items, that would include the overtime, the membership, the Dragon speaking, the reallocating the loan software, the parking, the city attorney for 2 months, the township revenues, and then those few new fees for police and fire, we would be at 191,066 of a decrease in the levy. So that's about 5 cents. We would have cut the levy by another 5 cents. So that's a good thing. And, we
Okay.
would still be at, the just shy of 100,000 for the levy limit. Now, I didn't put the $14,000 in there for motor pool. I know it's only 14,000, but our goal is to increase our motor pool. We're already discounting police and fire fees because we couldn't pass on the full fees. So if we remove that, we're just shortchanging capital replacement in the motor pool. So I would recommend against passing that on. I mean, you can get rid of the airboat, just don't reduce the fee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. It is late.
So I know we're trying to get rid of or move the two, or
Right. So
cover
you've
the
got
two
one.
positions. Could we cover one
Yeah.
this year and grant one?
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
I was gonna
Yeah, so that was pretty good.
suggest that maybe split the two to keep us under the expenditure restraint, and that's still, we cut 5 cents off the levy, which is, every penny of the levy is $37,000
Yeah.
in taxes.
Yeah, so that was good.
So that's, which means,
So then the tax rate,
Would-
would be $8.82.
Mm-hmm.
This is again based on an estimated assessed value. So down from $10.86, so a $2.03 change with the revaluation equalized, would go down to $8.55 from $9.05. So a 50-cent decrease in the equalized,
okay,
which isn't an estimate, the equalized value.
okay.
So, now typically we're working on our budget publication. So would you feel comfortable publishing the budget with the change in the insurance and these changes that we seem to have consensus for this evening? Or do you want people to vote on doing that?
I'm good, I guess, I think I'm good with that.
Okay.
Those numbers, I don't, Mayor, do those numbers, those sound like they kind of hit the target you're looking for, or?
Oh, we didn't talk about payment in lieu of tax,
No,
though.
we did not, yes.
Oh, something we want to discuss?
Well, so, back in August, we had our meeting about reducing payment in lieu of tax. Obviously, with all the challenges that we were having with this budget, with the 15% increase in health insurance, there was no wiggle room for that. If you wanted to try to make a change to the payment in lieu of tax, you could either look at another revenue source, like the event revenues, or you could say, we're not going to reduce the tax rate on some of these police and fire changes in revenues that we just talked about, and instead, we're going to reduce the payment in lieu of tax by $50,000 or something like that. I mean, the net impact to the city is the same. As we mentioned at that meeting, we're not going to be able to reduce rates. So you won't be providing any
There wouldn't be any water relief.
relief for the water users. And you did give the water utility $1.8 million for meter replacement this year, which is more than a payment in lieu of tax, 1 year of payment in lieu of tax. But it's, again, it's up to you guys.
I think
You're the boss.
I'm a little, my concern is that back in August, when they had that presentation from Ellers, and I forget the exact numbers, but it's like, the water utility still needs a substantial shoring up, even if we do eliminate the pilot, it's not gonna, it'll stem the losses, but not, we're still not gonna see, meaningful rate reduction.
Right.
Until, well, at least we're not gonna see rate reductions until we have a rate case, and I don't think we're at that point yet with the utility.
And you are contemplating another 800,000, relocating the 800,000 for the Headworks project to lift station, and then 300,000 for SCADA for water. So those two projects would help, with their capital outlay, capital plans for 2025's budget. So still providing support, and, the TIDs are supporting with some of the main replacement as well.
And
Well, my intent was to hopefully take 100,000 off of that, but that was in an effort to reduce the upward pressure on it so that we can delay any rate case. But we did make a conscious decision to try to recover, because we had that 17% water unbilled loss. So we really felt we needed to attack the non and under reporting meters. So we put a lot of extra money into meters, and that'll directly, maybe that'll help us in the next year. And then the other thing that's happening right now is there was a article written by Frank Schaefer on the PSC math, as we learned that even though it's counterintuitive that we could reduce the pilot by 100,000 and it wouldn't affect the rate. So because we have to build up those debt reserves, so that math does not work out for modern cities these days. So because of the high cost of some of the equipment and the structure. So hopefully there's an effort legislatively to give us some relief on it, because we do cover that debt as a city. So there's really not, I don't believe, I might be wrong, but I don't believe that PSC math is fit for what we've done.
No, I tend to agree with that. It's, it does, yeah, the PSC math definitely, after sitting through that Ellers presentation, the math hurts us rather than helps us.
Since we're talking about the water utility, I'd like to add, like, the CIP process, if we could add the solar project to there to lower the utility cost of the water plant, that, I think there's a lot of people that would support that, so. And I think the more I'm getting into this, the best way to do that is probably gonna be through the CIP process.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's a excellent candidate for CIP. So, okay, so I guess with pilot,
I don't know, do we have to set the number here? Council's going to have to ultimately
Right.
set the number.
Finance so what's in the budget is the 1,590,000. Council usually now will need to set a resolution because we are still forgiving a portion of the pilot, based on how the PSC would calculate that. So we have to have a resolution in place, and we've been bringing that to, the same meeting that we adopt the budget. So if we went with the budget the way it is, there would be a resolution that would show the 1,590,000 unless you want to change that rate to something else.
and was it last year we forgave 500,000?
Right, I think that was the computation. I
Yeah.
can't exactly remember, but
500.
we'll redo it. We
Yeah.
can get that calculation.
So we could,
Right.
of the 1,590,000, we could forgive the same amount we forgave last year.
Yes,
We would have that built in.
Yes, and really the calculation for the utility, because now the PFAS structure is a new asset, it would go up because there's a new assets being built there. So we'll be forgiving. Those wouldn't be in effect as of January 1 of '24, but next year they'll be in place.
That'll be, that asset's up and running,
Yeah.
so we can
So
count that asset.
Right, and we would, be able to show that we're forgiving more.
Yeah. So, okay, does that sound? I know,
don't like
it's
that.
it's getting late and the numbers are just all over the place in my head. So should, I guess, to kind of move things forward, we want to make a motion to accept the reductions that we've discussed. And we can, if you need to hear them again, we can.
Yeah, or could we just get a list of them for the finance meeting on
Oh, yeah.
Tuesday?
I can
and then
have
and then
something
vote
else.
and then vote on that.
Maybe
Sure.
that would be
Then?
safer?
Yeah.
Just
So I can read it.
Yep, I like that.
We're
idea.
all on the same page then.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'd be much
Okay.
easier for the minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so what,
Because we're all
okay,
over
We get
the
to
place.
sleep
The
on it.
minutes are gonna be a mess.
why don't, okay, I like that.
Okay.
That's something that I was just gonna suggest anyway. So, Mary Ann, you'll prepare
Yep.
a list of what we discussed.
Yes.
What its implications are to the levy, to the expenditure restraint, and then finance on Tuesday, we can vote on that.
Yes, and then I think we are still working on motor pool. Obviously, there's no capacity in the general fund, but we do want to, provide you with a plan going forward to, stay invested in our capital and work ourselves out
Okay.
of this predicament. Okay, thank you.
So, anything else? Anything, otherwise, we won't need a fourth budget session, but we can finish.
I think so.
We can finish things up on Tuesday at our regular finance meeting. And,
And then the public hearing is scheduled for the first meeting in November and adoption that Tuesday of Thanksgiving,
the second meeting in November.
my favorite holiday.
Yeah.
What's that?
Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Otherwise, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion from Hinkie, second from McElhaney. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Have a good night, all.